From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Vayera, finding a cure to wishy-washiness. We all know that Charlie Brown was wishy-washy. Never seemed to make up his mind, never seemed to take one stand on an issue. We find that in the Torah, Parshiot that we're reading, there is one family who seemed to be guilty over and again of wishy-washiness. It begins with Terach. Terach was the father of Abraham, and as Midrash says, he was an idol maker. However, later in his life, he did decide that he was going to go to the land of Israel. Lalechet Artza Canaan. He planned to go to the Holy Land. Vayamat Terach v'Charan. He only arrived up to Haran. Vayish Vushan. There they stayed. There he got stuck. He did not make it on his way to the land of Canaan. He had some good intentions, but he was wishy-washy. And he never quite made it to the Holy Land. Terach had a son in Haran. Haran wasn't sure where he stood in life. When Avraham went into the fiery furnace, as the Midrash says, Haran said to himself, well, let's see. If Avraham makes it, then I'll say I'm with Avraham. But if Avraham does not survive the fiery furnace, then I will indeed bow down to the idol. Of course, when Avraham succeeds in escaping the fiery furnace, Haran jumps into the fire, but because he's not really committed to the cause, he does perish. But he was considering being on Avraham's side. Haran had an interesting son named Lot. Lot, to his credit, goes with Avraham. When Avraham hears the words, Lach lecha mi'artzecha, go forth from your land, Vayelech ito Lot. Lot went with him. And for this, Lot is rewarded eventually having a piece of the land of Israel and the east bank of the Jordan. Lot is rewarded for this good deed. We also find that Lot was very hospitable. As Rashi says in this week's Parsha, Mi Beit Avraham lamad lachzor al arochim. He went to greet the guests, the angels, like Avraham did. But there's a difference. Rashi, the Midrash, point out several differences in the way he greeted the host, his guests. But particularly, he gave them matzot afa vayochelu. All he gave them was matzot. Maybe it was Pesach, maybe it wasn't. But all he gave them was matzot. Avraham ben Bakar, he gave them, according to Midrash, 3 tongues he gave them to eat. He slaughtered 3 animals. But Lot just gave them a piece of matzah. Lot, on the one hand, had chosen to go with Avraham. But eventually, when Avraham tells him, go where you want, it's not working out. He parad nami alai, let's split up. Lot sort of goes after his eyes and picks the valley of Jordan. And he picks Vayahal at Sodom. He pitched his tents all the way up to Sodom. Up to, perhaps not including. But he was bordering on Sodom. And when Sodom was destroyed, he almost was swept away with it. He hesitated. He wasn't sure which side he was on. And then you have the daughters of Lot. The daughters of Lot, on one hand, the daughters of Lot were evil. They slept with their father. On the other hand, the daughters of Lot were trying to maintain the world as they knew it. They thought there was no one left in the world. And for this great mitzvah, trying to keep the world together, they were indeed rewarded a part of the land of Israel, their 2 children, Ammon and Moab. Ammon and Moab themselves have a part that's good and a part that's bad. We know that Lo Yavo Ammoni B'Kal Hashem, Lo Yavo Ammoni U'Moavi B'Kal Hashem, an Ammonite, a Moabite cannot marry into the tribe of Israel. But, say the rabbis, Gemara and Brachos, discuss it in Yevamos as well. But you can marry the wives. Ruth was perfectly acceptable to be part of the Jewish family and to marry Ruth. So we have Ruth. However, according to the rabbis, there was another figure between Moab and Ruth, and that's Eglon. Eglon, according to the rabbis, the Gemara Nazir was in fact the father of Orpah and Ruth. And Eglon, on the one hand, oppressed the Jews as the king of Moab. On the other hand, he stood up when he thought that a secret from God was being told by Ehud ben Gera. And therefore, he's rewarded to be the father, ultimately, of the Mashiach, of King David. He had one daughter who was good, one daughter who was bad. Orpah, who turns her back on the Jewish people, and Ruth, who becomes the mother, great-grandmother of David. And then the final scene. The final scene is a scene where David and Goliath go at it. David and Goliath, one challenges the other. And when David slays Goliath, the rabbis say that Goliath was actually a descendant, says Gemara in Sota, Daf Mem Beis Mem Beis, a descendant of Orpah. David, descendant of Ruth. David, the descendant of the good part of the family, slays Goliath, representative of the bad part of the family. But it's not a matter of different parts of the family. It's a matter of ultimately triumphing over this wishy-washiness. It's an idea that if perhaps all of us are in some way like Lot, we're a little bit leaning on this way, or on the other hand, we're going on the other way. We want to be good, but we're not sure if we want to go all the way. David slays Goliath, and with that, sets the issue to rest. He puts aside his Moabite side, the bad side of Lot, the bad side of Terach, the bad side of all the ancestors, and he sifts it through, and by slaying Goliath, he symbolically slays that wishy-washy part of himself, and perhaps the part of all of ourselves. When will Mashiach come? When will the Messiah come? When people can slay that Goliath. When we take that part of ourselves which says, well, on the one hand, we're gung-ho about the Torah and mitzvahs, but on the other hand, maybe it's not that important. Maybe it's just a side part of our lives. We can slay those feelings. We can make the Torah mitzvahs a central part of our lives. Be committed to it through and through, like David, like Abraham. Then indeed, we can slay that giant. We can slay that Goliath, because ultimately it's a force that looms large in our lives. And at that moment, you become David, and David is the forefather, the Mashiach himself, one day who will redeem the world from the depths of wishy-washiness in which we usually find ourselves. Thank you for joining us here today at the Anshe Sfard Beth Lemeth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee. And thank you, Jason Lefkowitz, for making this presentation possible. Join us again each week as we discuss the Parsha, Mirz Hashem, with the help of God. And you can refer to our past archives for previous discussions. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.